Hi Shri, good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning, Anup. How are you?
Okay, Shri, first of all, I want to thank you today to give me time out of your busy schedule to discuss this topic of cybersecurity. Yes, right? However, before we begin, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience so that they know who are you, what you do, and then we can get into the main conversation.
All right.
Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anup. It's really nice to interact with you and talk to you about cybersecurity and organizational culture and everything else around that. My name is Shreekanth Moorthy. Everybody calls me Shri, and I've been with Tata Technologies for about 12 years. I'm currently their CIO. And before taking on the CIO role, I was in charge of the PLM, or Product Lifecycle Management Business Group, and which I helped build and bring it to a point where it's a flourishing organization. And subsequently, I took on the CIO role. My background, though, is in manufacturing, right? So I've spent many years in plants, either building plants or managing production. And so you can say that I'm one of those people who's moved in from a business side to internal facing IT, and that's my background. And I'm extremely happy that we're actually talking about this very important topic today. So ask away, and I'll do my best to show you what my perspective is in all of these things.
Yeah, thanks, Shri. I think the reason I am wanting to discuss this topic with you and some more senior colleagues in the industry is the pandemic, COVID-19, made us look back at what we were doing and not doing well, right? And one area where I was involved fairly closely was enabling the remote working or work from home infrastructure for my for the organization. And in that process, in that experience, I realized a lot of challenges that were more IT or cybersecurity specific. So what I wanted to begin in terms of our conversation was, what are your views in terms of impact of this pandemic on IT as well as cybersecurity as an overall area?
See, Anup, I off the um, at the very start, I would say that IT and cybersecurity were perhaps the most affected by this pandemic, right? I mean, surely there's a bit of a bias when I say it because I'm the CIO, but IT and cybersecurity were the backbone in which entire companies were leaning on to make sure that their respective companies stayed afloat, right? Stayed profitable, and for many of these companies, they thrived in the face of adversity, right? So IT and cybersecurity cannot be looked at separately from anything else for a company to work, right? So it's this engine that made sure that the company could actually do what they wanted to do. And no one assumed at any time in our history, right, anywhere, that the world would come under a lockdown. Even this word lockdown is kind of new to our vocabulary, right? And when people were asked to work from home, uh, they said, okay, go work from home. But then there are many different shades to this problem statement, right? Uh, at work, for example, if you had shift patterns, then you had people in the first shift, second shift, and the general shift. And maybe the same desktops were being used by many people, right? And even if that's not the case, if you ask people to work from home, you have to make sure that they had those devices, laptops, desktops, tablets, um, Wi-Fi dongles, so that they have internet connections at home, or wherever they were you know in this pandemic situation, because a lot of our people, as with other companies, had gone home to their hometowns. So uh, the impact onto IT and cybersecurity was massive, because once we figured out this initial problem, that is shipping these devices to people's homes, then came the question of security. How do you protect the data? At work, you had, you know, firewalls and actual facilities to make sure that people didn't steal your data, and everything was in a contained environment, in a contained network. But now all of a sudden we have, you know, thousands of networks really. Each person's home is a separate office, right? And so cybersecurity clearly played a huge part. And you know, let's be honest about it. No one had planned to be working from home, and no one had planned to have networks that would be extremely secure according to proper, you know, corporate guidelines. I mean, it's very easy. I mean, you know, you walk into anybody's house, any of your friends' house, and ask them to share their Wi-Fi password. Most often, it's their phone number, or most often it's something as simple as ABC123 ABC kind of a thing, or 123456789. So all these things tell you that 99.9999% of people, even if they are from an IT background, at home don't have the same levels of cybersecurity that you have at work. So clearly, I think you know, the impact of cybersecurity and IT in this you know, new world of ours has been tremendous, and the impact on it also has been significant.
Yeah, and thanks for answering that. My next question is a follow-up question to what you narrated so far. What are some of the top 2 or 3 challenges that you faced and you foresee in the next, you know, now that work from home or remote working is the norm? What are some of the challenges that you foresee, and what should be our approach to overcome these challenges?
See, first of all, I'll be honest with you, right? The new normal, right? Whenever people talk about it, I mean, I shrug my shoulders, because the ground is still settling, right? A pandemic has happened. The peoples of the world reacted to it. The industry readjusted their processes and the procedures, and, you know, to continue operating this, to ensure that this proverbial ship didn't sink, right? In my view, there will be several points of new normals throughout, you know, even now, right? Before the vaccine was developed, we assumed that everybody would be working from home, right? Now that the vaccines are out or being rolled out, things will change, and they will continue to change, right? But at the end of the day, we are social animals, right? We have to see each other, which is why video calling and this kind of interaction has gained so much of popularity. But fundamentally, even outside, you will see that people are saying enough. We will take precautions. We hope that we will take precautions, but then we will go out and meet people. So the new normal itself is changing a lot of things. But one thing has not changed, right? All of a sudden, the industry has realized that it's okay to work from home. There was a time when you would interview somebody and they say, do you allow working from home? And we say, oh, no, we don't do that, right? But now it's completely understandable, and we actually support it. And you know, we know that whether a person is working from home or working from the office location, work still gets done, right? So from that perspective, I don't think you know, anybody will shy away from the fact that working from home will be the new added element to this complex work environment that we have. Right? The challenge really is going to be one of privacy, right? Data privacy, security, to make sure that your data and your customers' data don't get stolen. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody is waiting out there to steal data, but there are a whole lot of people, you know, these what we call as bad actors, who are just waiting on the periphery, trying to figure out which person is careless or which point of entry is lax to allow them to get in and then steal the data, right? Even though you may not want to steal data, right? your lax security standards could offer somebody else a gateway into the network, and then they could do what they've been wanting to do, right? So I think the biggest and no matter how much technology you put in, Anup, right? And I'm sure you agree with me, but no matter how much technology you put in, it's people, right? I'll give you a very, very simple example. At Tata Technologies as well, we've implemented the most sophisticated cybersecurity infrastructure that there is in terms of technology availability, right? Well, that's great. Somebody gets an email, right? That's obviously a phishing email that we know, but this gentleman or this lady clicks on that link very innocently and then types in their password, right? Or tries to figure out what's going on. That's it. That one act, which took about 15, 20 seconds, has compromised that person's credentials. Okay. Nothing may happen in the immediate future, but the bad actor will wait on, an appropriate time to study what's actually happening in terms of this user's behavior, and then attack when nobody really knows that attack is going to happen, right? And those kind of things are going to trouble us all the time. And see, it's one thing to say, well, if your account gets compromised, please tell us, right? What if you don't know if your accounts got compromised, right? And people are the weakest link in this entire chain. Okay, so I cannot say this enough, but it is not IT's responsibility. Let me put it a little bit more directly. Just to say that there is a cybersecurity team and an IT team taking care of all this infrastructure, cybersecurity is not IT's responsibility or the cybersecurity team's responsibility alone. It has to be an organizational responsibility. Every single person, right, within the organization needs to worry about it as much as they worry about how safe their money is in their bank, right? So I think that's one of the things that I think is critical. In terms of other challenges, I mean, let's take our own Wi-Fi network at home, right? We don't go around trying to figure out, Anup, you work for Tata Technologies or XYZ company, let me come in and see how secure your network is. We don't do that, right? From in multiple countries, the rules of privacy don't allow me to come into your house, right? So how do I safeguard everything that you're doing, right? And I think technology is still evolving in many of those areas where video surveillance or just making sure that we do behavioral analysis of generally, for example, Sri logs in at this time, works on emails at this time, then does something else, then goes for lunch. I mean, that kind of a thing. If the systems are beginning to actually understand, and then they say, oh, wait a minute, it's 3 a.m. in the morning. Sri usually doesn't log in at 3 a.m. in the morning. Is he traveling, right? Or if he's not traveling, then I should flag this as a potential risk. And those kind of algorithms, those kind of technologies are coming to the market, and we are seeing more and more of them. But suffice it to say, the number of challenges, I could keep talking about this for hours, but the number of challenges with people working at home is just humongous.
Okay, yeah. And I think the point that you just mentioned, the newer kind of softwares and applications that are getting into the market, which is more of surveillance, and they are backed by AI ML algorithms, so that they usually raise flags when they detect some unusual activity. That definitely will address the problem to some extent. But I think the point that you made, that by simply having an IT team and a cybersecurity team, carrying that confidence for long that we are a secured network, we are a secured enterprise, may not hold true. and it is each and every employee of the company that has to participate in making this happen. So other than IT, sorry,
yeah.
just completing my point. So other than IT and the cybersecurity team, which other functions, in your opinion, can play a vital role in enhancing the cybersecurity posture of an organization?
I was about to add, it's not just it's like if you have a 1,000-person company, then you have to assume you have 1,000 networks that you have to manage, right? That's one thing. But more importantly, the other teams, every single organization within the larger company, right? Whether it is finance or procurement or HR or whatever, right? All the business units, every single organization plays a huge role in this, okay? There are enabling functions and there are business functions. Business function and the level of responsibility, right? One might say is more here or less there, and we can argue about that depending on the company that we are dealing with, right? But think about this example. A person gets phished, right? Their email gets compromised and their credentials get compromised. The bad actor sends an email to the finance person saying that, please, from next month onwards, send my salary to this bank account. First, I was doing it with ICICI. Now I'm doing it with HDFC.
Okay.
Or a different bank, right? Finance says, okay, great. We will do that. And maybe they'll ask for some more information like a cancel check or whatever else. And this person sends the cancel check. On the actual person, that person doesn't know all these things that are happening. They don't even see those emails in their sent folder. Finance makes the change. Salary starts getting deposited into that other person's account. This gentleman who's been hacked really comes back to finance and says, help me, what's going on, right? So if you look at that, just that element, there's a business person and there's a finance person. If IT is not involved here, right? They got compromised and that compromise turned into a fraud, right? Into a theft. So, and even on an HR side, for example, let's take HR for the moment. HR manages all the payroll information. HR manages all the personnel information, which is, as we call it, SPII, or sensitive personal identifiable information, right? From a GDPR perspective, and we can talk about that if you want. But all this wealth of information has to be very, very secure. So it's extremely important for HR and finance and procurement and everybody else in the entire value chain to be as worried or even more worried about data within their purview than specifically IT or cybersecurity.
Okay. So Shri, continuing this point further, so I understand that now it is not only about IT and the cybersecurity team, it is the rest of the organization. What is your view as far as your organization is concerned? You operate in multiple geographies, you have your leadership in multiple geographies. What kind of ecosystem you are trying to create inside your organization, especially involving the C-suite executives and the regional leadership to garner support and make it a part of your culture rather than just making it a compliance-oriented activity? What are some of the things that Tata Technologies have been working on?
This is a great question, Anup. So if I look at this, right, what we've realized at Tata Technologies, what the C-suite within Tata Technologies has realized is cybersecurity is not a compliance matter. It's an existential issue. Right? If everybody doesn't get concerned or worried about cybersecurity, and even our board actually is interested in what we are doing about cybersecurity and how we are safeguarding customer information, how we are safeguarding our own information. So over the years, right? Earlier, I can confess that many years ago, it was a compliance issue, right? And like many other companies, but as cybersecurity attacks kept going up, we started to worry about it, and now anytime and the amount of investment that has been done on cybersecurity and cybersecurity technologies has increased multifold, and that is all thanks to the leadership. I'm talking about the executive leadership team, the C-suite, and the board of directors, all kind of supporting the fact that we must do everything we can in our power to implement technologies and processes and procedures to safeguard our information, right? So what we've done really, anytime there's an issue, we have escalated it, or at least made the executive leadership team aware of what is happening and what we have done to fix it, right? And the moment that happens, they want to know what we are going to do, what we, meaning the entire organization, is going to do to ensure that that doesn't happen anymore, or at least people are aware of it, right? So a very simple example, weak passwords. Many years ago, it was okay if you said, oh, this is only an internal server, this is not external facing, so I can keep a weak password. I can keep a password called admin, and the password would be 123 ABC 123 or whatever else, and it's okay because it's not touching the outside. These days, our executive leadership team is actually telling everybody below them and their respective organizations that, God forbid, if there's an attack and that attack comes through one of your servers or one of the servers that you take care of, then you are answerable, right? So I think it's all about accountability and responsibility. Okay. And we've got tremendous support from the CEO down to everybody within the leadership team, and also people on the ground level. And this constant barrage of information has to keep going on constantly, right? And simple things like when we put on screensavers, right? The screensavers will show examples of how their data can be stolen, right? For example. So people are constantly being taught. And one would say that we have done these things and we expect it to work this way, but I would say that constant, incessant information exchange is more important than anything else at this point in time. And too much information is not enough, is what I'd say, right? And they have got to keep understanding that we cannot sleep on this, and we have to make sure that we do every single thing over and over and over again. You take a example of a pilot that flies a 747 after 35 years on the force, right? And he's been doing this, and he could do this on his sleep. But even now, they take a checklist, and the pilot would say something, the co-pilot would sign off. The co-pilot would say something, the pilot would sign off. There's a check and balance that constantly goes on. If pilots can do that, that kind of an analogy is what we want to bring into our own lives with cybersecurity within our infrastructure and our organizations.
Right. One more question that comes to my mind. Since Tata Technologies is into an engineering services organization, and many large automotive customers, and aero as well as heavy machinery, as the industry is moving towards IoT, cloud technologies, and so on, IoT devices is the next big hardware where IT will get enabled. What are your views when it comes to IoT from a cybersecurity perspective?
I think I would ask you and your and your viewers to just look up on the web, on Google, for videos on how cars can be controlled remotely, right? So I think the challenge is upon us, right? All these devices, all these intelligent devices, whether it is cars, trucks, planes, mining equipment, whatever else that work. I mean, today, for example, there are mining equipment manufacturers that have huge machines working completely without a single human being in remote mines in Africa or Australia, right? So when everything is controlled remotely, okay, where AI and ML are actually governing what that machine should or should not do, you must assume that it's equally possible for hackers and others to invade that, right, and take control. Power grids, right? Power grids are also one of those things, right? So it's critically important that we make sure that we embed cybersecurity as a fundamental element when we are actually writing the software for those IoT devices, right, which is connected to the internet, or your security cameras, which is connected to the internet. You can be rest assured that those devices can be hacked if you don't put in enough control on them, right? So you've got to make sure that you bring in any and all technology and practices, good practices, to make sure that those areas are also secure.
Yeah. Thanks, Sri. I think that opens up actually a Pandora's box for many of us in this industry. But I think that is important because the people who are viewing this video, sooner or later, we will have a robot as our co-workers. We will be using IoT and other smart devices, and at least being aware that this device is prone to kind of compromise will protect us fundamentally, and at least we will not do some of the acts which can add to our risk, right? My last question is more of a comparative commentary that I am asking you to make. Like, we have these fire drills which are done from time to time and not once a year. That's kind of a reinforcement mechanism so that employees do not forget what to do in the event of some kind of a fire or some kind of emergency. What would be your views of similar kind of an exercise when it comes to cybersecurity as an area?
Good. Let me take one small step back, right? 99.99% companies out there, professional companies, right, that are ISO certified, right, or have some kind of a governing certification that they have, right, will have something called BCP, or Business Continuity Plan, and DR, Disaster Recovery. Okay. Now, these two things had been compliance issues for the most part. And when we talk about compliance issues, we had assumed before the pandemic that BCP and DR is going to be used only if there's catastrophic failure, right, of some kind, earthquake, right, fires, war, right, those kind of things is what people thought when DR and BCP would be in place. And so we have every single company, for the sake of ISO, so compliance, we would have a main site and we would have a DR site, or a disaster recovery site. If this site goes down, then we will shift to the other one. But nobody really did any drills to make sure that actually worked or whatever else. Well, I wouldn't say nobody. Very few companies did, right? And even at Tata Technologies, we used to do the DR drills, but it was to a large extent mainly IT focused, right? We would say, if this network goes down, then where do we go? If this application goes down, where do we go? Those kind of things. That's one element, right? The second element is, everybody says, oh, I got my data in the cloud, and Azure is very secure, and AWS is very secure, and Google Cloud is very secure, and this and that. It doesn't matter, right? They provide security for the cloud, the applications, and the data. The security of those two things are your problem, and people don't realize it. Just because I've taken a subscription onto Azure or AWS, right, and I have, my infrastructure there, right, I have to make sure that I have the technologies implemented that would make sure that that is safe. There is something called cloud security as well, right? So these two things are a little different. And from a DR and a BCP standpoint, it's become exceedingly important for all of us to make sure that we do those drills, assuming, now that we've learned from the pandemic, assuming that everything will be shut off, right? We have no recourse, but we have to still keep the company running. And so what do we do? And so now we are doing those kind of drills. And I'm telling you, with the technology that is present and having trained the people, appropriately, I think at least from a Tata Technologies standpoint, we have done an amazing job to ensure that we are extremely well prepared for any eventualities in the future.
Right. No, I think that's a good point that you mentioned, that the BCP and the disaster recovery, it kind of got challenged when we entered the pandemic situation.
It got rewritten.
So one probably last question. It is very interesting to continue the dialogue, but I'm aware of the time that we have at hand. One last question is, you talked about training your employees. Now, let's say you do the training hypothetically in the month of January, right? What do you do next? Is it you train them once and you leave them, or how do you kind of reinforce things back to them?
Oh, no. This is extremely important. We have to look, training has to be an ongoing exercise, right? So you learned something today. Let us say I'm an ordinary employee, generally a novice as far as cybersecurity is concerned, and you're my instructor, right? Whether and then you tell me all these things, right? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? You should do this. You should do that. And first I might say, well, this is a little far-fetched, but you will give me some examples, and then you will show me how it's being done. And all of a sudden I get worried about it, right? Then I worry about how safely, or when was the last time I changed my ATM PIN code, right? All those thoughts will go in my head, and that's great. So for the next maybe 2 or 3 months, I'll be careful. Okay. After that, it'll die out. The urgency of it and everything else. So this has to be done on a regular basis, right? The other thing is there are things called phishing campaigns, okay, where you use technology to ensure that you throw out certain mails that are phishing mails, right? And you try to figure out how many people actually click on those links. And if they click on those links, they will not get access to any system, right, till they go through a training exercise of 1 hour.
Okay.
Right? So you have to have, it's very hard to push on a rope, right? There has to be healthy tension throughout the entire system so that people are constantly on edge to make sure that they are doing everything that they are doing in a safe and secure manner.
Got that. Now, actually, a last question, Shri. So we have new employees who join from other organizations. And obviously, there are existing employees. And then there are employees who have decided to take up a job outside your organization. From a cybersecurity perspective, what would be your commentary when it comes to new people joining your company and existing people leaving your company? What are some of the measures or policies that should be enacted to support that?
Oh boy, I know we're running out of time, but there's a bunch of different things that one could do. First of all, when a new person joins the organization, you have to assume that person doesn't know anything. You have to assume that every single thing that you do from a cybersecurity standpoint, or that you expect people to do from a cybersecurity standpoint and safeguard that information is taught to this person. And they have to sign on the dotted line saying that they will uphold all these processes and procedures. They could have come from a cybersecurity company for all that matters, right? That doesn't matter. As long as they are joining your company, they need to ensure that that happens, right? That is, you have to assume that goes on, right? The for existing employees, of course, we have a whole lot of processes and technologies that we have in place to ensure that we safeguard that information. But for people who are exiting the companies, right, you have to be even more careful about when their access gets stopped, right, and in how many different places that access, had, I guess, logins, right, and where all do you stop it, right, and then there is something called the Security Operations Center. It's a concept. It's a set of services that are provided. Either you set up your own SOC, or you give it to an external firm to manage it for you, and they can monitor access or attempted access of certain individuals. And even though these people may not be part of the organization, if you see an attempted access, you know that something is wrong, right? So there are a bunch of different things that can be done to ensure that we can safeguard this information. But it is, while it's a education for new joinees, for people who are exiting, it's actually execution of many different technologies to ensure that we can safeguard that information. That's one thing. There's another thing called DLP, or data loss prevention, right? So we see this in the industry quite a lot, and I won't dwell into whether we see it at Tata Technologies or not, because that's not relevant to this element. But let's say you're quitting this company. You already decided at least 3-4 months ago that you're quitting, right? 3 months before your last day, typically, I'm just saying, right? Maybe in other countries it is 2 weeks, right? But typically, before you tender in your resignation, you already decided that you're leaving. And some people, whether they feel it appropriate or not, start sending themselves or taking data on USB, right? Company data that might help them in the future. Okay. And DLP, implementing DLP stops that from happening. Or at the very least, it will identify that there has been an attempt, or there has been an email sent by so-and-so to so-and-so's Gmail account or Hotmail account or Yahoo Mail account, whatever, right? And a certain file has been sent, and that file contains, costs, a proposal maybe, right, of a certain thing. And once you see that, you need to then take measures to have a conversation with those employees and try to do what you need to do. So there are a bunch of different technologies in place, but you have to fundamentally, at the end of the day, there's this gentleman called Edward Deming. He was the father of quality control, right? And statistical quality control. And he said, I mean, on a US dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust," right? So he used to say, his favorite quote is, "In God we trust, all others bring data." Okay. From a cybersecurity standpoint, the entire industry has adopted what is called as a zero trust policy, or zero trust network, or a zero trust whatever, right? I don't care how long you've worked in this company. I don't care whether you're a fresher who's joined in, or you're the CEO of this company or the CFO of this company. A zero trust policy will enable the right technologies and the procedures in place to ensure that there is absolutely minimal chance of theft of that data. But you've got to ensure that your policy procedures, your education, your technology is in place make sure that your data is as safe and secure as possibly can be.
Wonderful. I think very good pointers for me, of course, and for my team, and for many others who are in this profession when it comes to cybersecurity. Thank you so much, Shri. It has been. I would have loved to continue the interaction. Maybe I can book your calendar again for a second round.
Absolutely.
But, really enjoyed the interaction. A lot of learnings for me personally, and I'm sure people who are watching this video will reach out to you as well. To take some further.
Thank you for the opportunity, Anup. It was great to interact with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shri. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.